We're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 52 of the FilmBrony Podcast. I am, of course, Nick Canino, the guy in charge of the show. And with me, I have a guest who created the podcast, as always. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Hey, Søren, your mic's muted.
Oh, shit. And so, yeah, happy holidays, happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I know we were supposed to get this episode done days before, but I guess better late than never.
Yeah, better late than never. So, anyway, we got a ton of we got a bunch of reviews we're gonna talk about today, and then we have a list we're gonna talk about later on after we do our reviews. So stay tuned for that. But excuse me. Until then, let's start with what we usually do, which is the Blu-ray showcase.
All right, I have All of Us Strangers.
That's a great movie.
Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Nice.
The Bourne Supremacy. Give me a couple days and I'll have Bourne Ultimatum. The Brood.
Nice.
The Expendables 2. The only one that I felt was worth owning.
Yeah, the only good one.
First Cow.
First Cow was a great movie.
Funny Girl.
That's a great movie.
Down Up. The Grifters. I have Happy Feet, Polar Express, and A Christmas Story.
Nice.
Last of Us Season 1.
Nice.
Long Way North. Paper Moon. This Peanuts Holiday Collection. And the original Naked Gun series itself, Police Squad.
Nice. All right, I only have like 4 Blu-rays with me, so I might as well share what they are. 3 of them are from 2014, and the other one is from 2016, and it's also connected to one of the reviews one of the movies we're gonna talk about later on. So, without further ado, here we go. Boyhood.
One of the best of 2014.
Definitely one of the best. It's not the best film I saw that year, but it was definitely in top 10. Another one of my favorites of that year, Foxcatcher.
That's a good one as well.
Mm-hmm. Next, although I consider this the weakest of his movies, I still love this movie regardless. Inherent Vice.
That's pretty underrated, even if it is his weakest one.
I agree. And then one of my favorite movies of 2016, Moana.
One of Disney's best, and certainly better than that sequel we're going to talk about.
Yeah, really. And you know what? I don't care what anybody tells me. Moana is Frozen done right. All right. So, without further ado, let's get on with the reviews, and I might as well start. As I talk about the last October movie that came out that I saw called Your Monster. And Your Monster stars on Melissa Barrera as a soft-spoken actress who finds her voice again when she meets a terrifying yet weirdly charming monster played by Tommy Dewey that lives in her closet. Monster living in her closet. I really like this movie a lot. I really like this one a lot. It's weird and offbeat, yet very clever and very funny. The story felt well structured and engaging. Caroline Lindy's directing was great, and so was the screenplay she wrote for the film, especially with its witty dialogue. And the acting was excellent, especially from Melissa Barrera, who absolutely delivers one of her best performances to date as Laura. And Tommy Dewey was fantastic as Monster. was also fantastic as Monster, and their odd but their odd on-screen chemistry they had in the film actually felt satisfying. It had excellent makeup effects, great soundtrack, terrific cinematography. It was also really funny at times as well, especially with how the film does a brilliant job sprinkling in some witty and clever humor into the mix. And it also does a fantastic job with the way it explores its main theme and message involving finding one's voice. And the ending, if bizarre, was also very satisfying. If I had to point out a couple issues I had with the film, it did suffer through a couple pacing issues in the first and second act. There were some editing choices made in the film that also came up as being uneven and jarring, and there were a couple of side characters that did feel uninteresting and underdeveloped. But that's really it. Overall, your monster features some terrific performances and chemistry by Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey, and I found this movie to be funny, charming, intriguing, and highly entertaining throughout. I give your monster an 8 out of 10 or a B+.
Now we're going to talk about Robert Zemeckis' Here. And
Oh boy.
This movie had an interesting concept in that it focused on a particular piece of land where it evolved through various decades and generations. But it seems like Robert Zemeckis was more focused on showing off this concept rather than giving us a real story. It jumbles all over the place with little to no flow of focus, not to mention the CG is a bit wonky. And Alan
my god, yeah. Especially with how they use AI generated imagery to make the actors look like they're young. Like, good grief.
And Alan Silvestri's score feels like if the Sire House Rules music was taken from some royalty-free website or something. So in the end, this was better suited as an art project at a museum or a series of shorts like the original comics were. So not awful, but overly ambitious. Here gets the seal of mediocrity.
Yeah, here we go again. Another disappointment from Robert Zemeckis. Another disappointing film. Just when I thought that this was going to be his return to form, nope. This was a mess. This was another dud for Robert Zemeckis. Now, here's what I'll say about the film. Are there positives? Yes. Tom Hanks and Robin Wright both give off very good performances in the film, and they do have some good on-screen chemistry throughout. And I have to disagree with you on Alan Silvestri's musical score, Søren, because I actually liked his score. It's not the best he's composed, but it is. But it was a really solid score overall. It's got excellent cinematography and brilliant production design and costume design. However, this movie was a mess. The story, even in a non-linear narrative, was all over the place. Robert Zemeckis' directing was a muddled mess, and the screenplay that he and Eric Roth wrote for the film was atrocious, especially with the characters feeling paper thin and one-dimensional, and the dialogue being absolutely atrocious, to the point where you could have swore that Robert Zemeckis got an AI to write the dialogue for the film. And speaking of which, maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe it's not a good idea to use AI generated imagery to make Tom Hanks and Robert Wright's characters look young for the de-aging effects. Yeah, that's why the visual effects in this one felt very sloppy and unconvincing. I mean, bless the artist's hearts, bless the artist for this movie for trying their best, but it's just like the fact that they use generative AI for the de-aging effects, that's how bad it looked. The rest of the acting, while not terrible, feels phoned in. Paul Bettany and Kelly Riley, who are very talented actors, by the way, are both horribly wasted in this movie since they're not given that much to do. The stylized editing was cool at first, but by the time the film reached its 20-minute mark, it felt repetitive and all over the place. The pacing was a sluggish mess. It's riddled with cliches that you've seen in other films before. and the ending felt so unsatisfying. And the ending not only felt unsatisfying, but it also feels so opera-esque. Like something you would see like something you would see like in a daytime soap opera. That's how bad the ending was. But overall, here has some memorable moments here and there, and it features some great performances by Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. But the film is nothing more than a convoluted mess, and it's unfortunately another dud for Robert Zemeckis. I was vastly disappointed with this one. 3 out of 10 or a D+. Robert Zemeckis, you gotta... What are you doing, man? What are you doing? It's like, come on, man. Try harder next time.
Next, we have Juror No. 2. And the first thing I have to say is...
Fuck you, David Zaslav, for not giving this movie a nationwide release and only releasing it in 50 theaters. Fuck you.
I'll admit the courtroom drama is a genre that really particularly grabbed me. Not that the movies I've seen are bad. I really like 12 Angry Men, My Cousin Vinny, and so forth. But Clint Eastwood found a way to make it thoroughly engaging. The story about a juror who gets called to judge a murder which may or may not have been his fault kept me interested, and to me it engaged me more than Anatomy of a Fall with a similar premise last year. The directing and cinematography are on point, and so are the actors. Nicholas Hoult is great as the main character, and Zoe Deuce steals the show as his wife, and I could see her garnering a supporting actress nomination. So go see this movie ASAP, regardless of how much WB doesn't want you to, as you're in for a riveting story, and I'll give Juror No. 2 the seal cinema.
I only have 2 small nitpicks with the film, but they don't really affect like Juror No. 2 from being a brilliant swan song for Clint Eastwood. There were a couple of side characters that did feel a bit underdeveloped, and I wish the film was 10 more minutes longer, but that's it. The fact that Warner Brothers, thanks to that asshole David Zaslav, only decided to release the movie in 50 theaters really shows on how like on oh my god, really shows on how much of an incompetent idiot of a CEO he is, and why he's the worst CEO. And why he's like one of the worst one of, if not the worst CEO of all time. Yeah. But anyway, the story felt compelling and engaging. The screenplay was very good, especially due to how well written the dialogue felt. Clint Eastwood's directing was fantastic. The acting was terrific. Nicholas Hoult absolutely delivers one of his best performances yet as a journalist named Justin Kemp. While Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons, Chris Messina, and Zoe Deutsch are also terrific in the film as well. It has a very good musical score, great cinematography, good editing and pacing. And speaking of the pacing, yes, the pacing in this one is slow burn, but it fits very well with the tone that the film was trying to go for. It also does a brilliant job of the way it explores its themes involving justice, morality, truth, and guilt. The mystery aspects of the film felt intriguing, and above all that, both the climax and ending felt very satisfying. Overall, not only is Juror No. 2 one of Clint Eastwood's best movies he's made in years, but this is also such a compelling and riveting character study courtroom drama featuring Nicholas Hoult in one of his finest performances he's given out in his career. If this really is Clint Eastwood's final movie, given that he's 94, if this really is his final movie, then he went out with a big bang with this one, because this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. 9.5 out of 10 or an A. What a great movie. Check it out.
Next, we have Anora, and I'll be honest. When the movie started, I was really on board with this movie as we see a young prostitute hook up with the son of a wealthy Russian family. But little did I know that that's not even half the plot. When the real plot kicks in about 4 minutes in, that's when a really good movie becomes amazing.
Oh, yes.
Sean Baker's writing and directing shine
Yes.
through. So do the cinematography and pacing. The performances are all stellar, but it's Mickey Madison who's truly the standout.
Yes. She definitely was.
So go into this movie blind as a bat, and you'll have a hell of an experience. And I'll give Anora the seal of cinema.
I'm going to talk briefly about this movie because this is one of those movies where you need to experience this for yourself. And let me tell you a little history involving me and Sean Baker's movies. Once upon a time, back in 2015, I have seen the movie Tangerine, one of his earlier movies, and I really loved that movie. And I was looking forward to seeing what he was going to do next. And then in 2017, he did the Florida Project, which I was not a fan of whatsoever, even despite Willem Dafoe giving out one of his best performances of his career. That was the only thing that I felt the Florida Project deserved an Oscar nomination for. Willem Dafoe, hands down. And then 4 years later, he did Red Rocket, which I'm sorry, but I did not like that film at all. It is easily the most overrated film I've seen this decade so far. So I was a bit cautious about this one going into Anora, despite the fact that I was looking forward to seeing it. And oh my God, what a thrill. What a movie. Like, oh my God, what a movie. Again, I want to keep this brief because this is like one of those movies where you need to experience it for yourself. But this is easily one of the year's very best movies. In fact, this has officially dethroned Dune Part 2 as being the best movie that I've seen in 2024 so far. The acting from everybody involved was terrific, especially from Mickey Madison, who I feel delivers the year's best performance as Anora. She was terrific, and the amount of physical performance she gave, as well as the power and emotion that she brought to her character, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And on top of all that, the actor that played Ivan, Vanya, I don't want to butcher his name, but I'm going to show it right here. Right here. He was incredible. He was fantastic in this movie as well. You hate his character because of what he does, because of what he does throughout. Again, no spoilers, but his performance was so powerful that this is one of those characters you love to hate. And the story was fantastic and well structured, especially with how the first half of the film is basically like this fairy tale delivering in, and then when the second half kicks in, shit hits the fan. Like, oh man. It's like, what if Cinderella, what if a fairy tale met a harsh reality? That's what watching Anora felt like. And not only was Sean Baker's directing fantastic, but the screenplay he wrote for the film was brilliant. It's one of the year's very best screenplays. It's not just because of like how real and fleshed out the characters felt and how witty and well written the dialogue felt, but it was also because the movie did a wonderful job with the way it explored its themes involving its main theme involving identity, especially with who Anora really was. Even though the movie throws in like hints and implications involving Anora, the ambition they provided involving Anora was actually very well done. And it has a great soundtrack, fantastic cinematography, fantastic editing, excellent pacing, and it's also really funny. Like, oh my god! Like there were times throughout the whole film, including this one scene, which I'm not going to spoil, by the way, again, because this is one of those movies you need to see for yourself. But there was one scene that had me dying of laughter. Like, it had me falling out of my chair laughing. Like, oh my god. Oh my god. And without spoiling what happens at the end, the ending, especially with the final shot, made me go like this. Like, wow. That's how effective the ending was. Yeah, overall, the hype for this one couldn't be any more real. And the fact it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, it couldn't have been more well deserved. It was so well deserved. Yeah, overall, Anora is compelling, funny, exhilarating, and entertaining, and above all that, it's one of the year's. And above all that, not only is this Sean Baker's best movie he's made, but it's also one of the year's very best films. And with that, I'm going to give Anora a 10 out of 10 or an A+. Go see this movie for yourself. Please, see it for yourself. This is one of those movies where you just need to see it for yourself. Just, please. Well done, Sean Baker. Well done.
Next, we have Memoir by Snail. And after 2009's Mary Max and 2015's Ernie Biscuit, a lot of us were waiting to see what the newest Adam Elliott film would be. Thankfully, he pulled through with this one. Much like the rest of his work, this movie presents the themes of past trauma, betrayal, depression, religious dissonance, and hope, sprinkled with spectacular stop-motion animation and fantastic vocal performances, thus making for a hell of an animated film and further proof that the medium deserves way better than it's been getting as of late. I'll give Memoir by Snail as the seal of cinema. Now we're gonna get to Blitz, and this movie is okay. Taking place in the height of World War II, this movie goes back and forth between a young child who gets separated and goes against all odds to try to get back home, and his mother who tries to live her life in spite of it. And that's the biggest problem, it's tonally all over the place. The anti-war and anti-racism themes aren't that developed and have been explored in much better movies. There's some editing choices that kind of bothered me. The production design and music are solid enough, as are the performances. There's a couple subplots that could have been cut, but the ending will leave you satisfied enough. So not bad, definitely an improvement over Whitebird, but it just wasn't for me. I'll give Blitz a seal of accuracy.
It's good, but not great. I mean, the biggest problem with it, and the reason is because it comes down to my biggest issues with the film. The story was an inconsistent mess since it tried too hard to stitch two stories into one film. One regarding Saoirse Ronan's character trying to live her life without her son, and one about her son traveling literal miles back home. And usually Steve McQueen writes great screenplays when it comes to stuff like Shame, and Widows. But the screenplay he wrote for Blitz was a mess. Since not only, and it's not just because of its clunky dialogue, but because it didn't really explore the themes of racism and war all that much. And that was really disappointing. And there's a couple editing choices that felt really jarring and uneven, and it suffers through some pacing issues as a result of this. But overall, it was a good movie. But, however, regardless of how I feel terrific acting, especially from Saoirse Ronan, excellent directing, production values and costume design, musical score, and cinematography do make this one worth checking out. It's good, but not great. 7 out of 10 or a B. And to answer your question, I would say, well, my least favorite genre is easily disaster movies, but But most favorite genre, I have to say a tie between animation and drama.
Now we're gonna get to Emilia Pérez.
Oh God,
I don't care. This movie had a ton of buzz ever since being submitted to the Oscars foreign film category, and people seem to love or hate it. Unfortunately, I'm on the hate train. This movie looks nice and some neat cinematography, and the performances are good, especially Zoe Saldana. But the story is
she was the absolute standout in the whole film, no question about it.
But the story is both boring and all over the place, and I have one question to ask. Why the fuck
was this a musical?
I mean, I wouldn't mind so much, except not only are the musical numbers pointless, but this isn't the type of story that warrants this kind of angle.
No.
So, overall, not terrible, but certainly overhyped. It gets the sealed mediocrity.
This has now dethroned Babes as being the most overrated movie that I've seen in 2024. Yes, it's very well directed. Yes, the acting was terrific, especially from Zoe Saldana, who gives out one of the year's best performances. Yes, the score was very good, and it had fantastic cinematography, and it has, and when it came to the music, and there was only one song that I liked that I agree that I do think deserves the best original song nomination. And that was the one by Zoe Saldana where she sings oh, hold on, let me check. Oh, there we go. El Mal. That was the only song that I actually found memorable throughout the whole film. But otherwise, I didn't find the rest of the musical numbers numbers felt shoehorned in. The story was all over the place, especially since this is one of those movies where it didn't know what it wanted to be. Does it want to be a social commentary on violence and identity, or does it want to be a love story? We don't know because the movie doesn't take its time to develop it. And it's disappointing given the fact that the director of the film directed one of my favorite movies of 2018, which was The Sisters Brothers. So I don't know what happened here. And while he did a very good job with the directing, I cannot say the same for the screenplay, because not only do most of the characters feel two-dimensional and underdeveloped, as well as the dialogue feeling stiff, but like the story, it does not know what it wants to do or what it's trying to say with its social commentary on violence and identity. The editing was a muddled mess. It has very bad pacing throughout. The pacing was all over the place at times. Sometimes it's too frantic, and then other times it's too sluggish. And as mentioned before, and as mentioned just now, its themes and social commentary on violence and identity never come to fruition due to the movie not taking its time with exploring those themes. And not only did it have a lackluster ending, but I've already mentioned that my biggest problem with this movie is that the musical numbers feel shoehorned in. Minus El Mal, performed by Zoe Saldana, the rest of the musical numbers not only felt unremarkable, but they serve no purpose to the film whatsoever other than to pad out the runtime. I get that he wanted to make this based on the opera, how should I put it? I get that the director of the film wanted to do an opera-esque, libretto type movie, since it was based on that of the same name. But again, why would you make it a musical of all things? And there's this one scene where it made me go like, I did not need to see that. No spoilers to those who want to see it, but let's just say it takes place at a hospital. Yeah. Overall, while the film is admirable for its ambition and it has some memorable moments here and there, as well as a very well-acted cast, including Zoe Saldana giving out one of the year's best performances, Emilia Pérez was unfortunately such a convoluted and inconsistent mess, not only in terms of its storytelling, but what it's trying to say involving its social commentary and themes involving identity and violence, that left me feeling empty by the time it was over. And because of the film receiving a 78% Rotten Tomatoes and a 71 on Metacritic, and the fact that it's not Joker Filet bad, but it still wasn't. But the musical numbers still weren't that good. And yeah, because of those things I mentioned, 78% Rotten Tomatoes and a 71 on Metacritic, and how people and how the critics were like declaring this like Oscar worthy, this is easily my pick for the most overrated movie I have seen in 2024. I'm sorry, but I can't recommend this one. 4.5 out of 10 or a C.
It's Oscar worthy. And by that, I mean long, boring, drawn out, and dull.
Yeah, really. All right, so let's see what movie I have next on here. Oh yeah, the best Christmas pageant ever. So the best Christmas pageant ever is basically the story. So I saw the trailer to the best Christmas pageant ever when I went to go see My Old Ass. And no, Mitch, if you're watching this, do not think of a sexual innuendo involving my old ass. No, siree. The title of the film. I said the title of the film, My Old Ass. But anyway, I saw the trailer for the best Christmas pageant ever, and it follows the Herdmans, a group of juvenile delinquent siblings who have advertently found themselves starring in their small town's Christmas pageant, even despite the fact they're known as like the worst kids ever. I was curious about this one going in, but I was a little cautious given the fact that I'm not a fan of faith-based movies at all. But surprisingly, I actually enjoyed this movie. Now, it's not perfect. Now, it's not one of the best Christmas movies. I'll say there are some problems with this movie, like the screenplay could have used some improvement on the dialogue, since some of it felt clunky at times, as well as some of the side characters, including some of the antagonists, feeling one note. And on top of the film having a couple pacing issues in some spots, it also has a bland musical score, a really bland musical score, and it has its share of like predictability and cliches as well. But overall, this was actually a solid movie, a really solid film. The story actually felt engaging. Dallas Jenkins' directing was very good. The acting was also very good, especially from Judy Greer, who easily steals the entire show. It's got great cinematography, solid editing, great amounts of comedy sprinkled into the mix, especially with how it surprisingly goes all out with some of the jokes shown, which actually caught me by surprise. The main theme of redemption, as well as its messages involving kindness and how you shouldn't judge others, as well as the importance of community, did not come across as preachy, and instead felt insightful and genuine. And the ending also felt very satisfying. Overall, I liked it. The best Christmas pageant features Judy Greer stealing the entire show, and it was also funny, entertaining, and surprisingly wholesome. So I liked it. 7 out of 10 or a B. Next. Oh boy, have I been looking forward to talk about this one. Next is one of the best movies I've seen this year, Heretic. Heretic is the new film from the same writers that brought us A Quiet Place, and it stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East in a story about two Mormon missionaries who attempt to convert a reclusive man, but realize he is more dangerous than he seems. And guys, this, like Anora, this is one of those movies where you need to experience it for yourself, because this is a great movie. And hello, Network 98. Welcome to the podcast. Yeah, this is one of those movies where you need to experience it for yourself, because this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. The story felt highly engaging. It's very well directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. And considering that they also wrote and directed 65, which, if you remember, was one of the worst movies I saw last year. They made they pulled a 180 with this. Like, they made a 180 flip, and it was just incredible. Not to mention that their screenplay was fantastic, especially in terms of its well-written dialogue, the characters that feel fleshed out and three-dimensional, and how it does a brilliant job being so ambiguous and open-minded when it comes to answers involving religion, as well as exploring its themes on faith, fear, and the relationship between religion and society. The acting was terrific. Hugh Grant absolutely delivers one of his best performances yet as Mr. Reed, especially due to how menacing yet powerful he came off as. Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East are also fantastic in the film, as well as both Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, respectively. And although he's not in the film that much, Topher Grace was brilliant as Elder Kennedy. It's got an excellent musical score, terrific cinematography, great pace, great editing, tight pacing, and I was also surprised at some of the humorous moments that the movie was, as mainly coming from Hugh Grant's character, that the movie sprinkled into the mix. There's real tension and suspense, which I absolutely loved when it comes to either horror or thriller movies. It's got excellent production design, and although the ending, and although it will split a lot of people, I actually like the way it ended. It gave it a far more ambiguous note, while also giving us a conclusion to the story. Now, if I had one minor issue with the film, it would be this. While I loved how ambiguous the film felt, to the point where it's up to the viewers to answer for themselves, there were some certain aspects regarding Hugh Grant's character, Mr. Reed, that I wish they could have explored a bit more of. For example, it would make more sense what I mean is, it would make more sense if we knew a bit more on what his plan was, how long he's been doing this, and how long is he going to continue to do this. Maybe I wish we could have gotten one or two things out of three explained, but that's really it, because this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. Along with Hugh Grant delivering one of his best performances yet, Heretic is one of the most ambiguous, intriguing, suspenseful, and engaging cat and mouse thriller films I've seen this entire year. Check it out. I highly recommend it. 9.5 out of 10, or an A. Check it out. And hello, Nicholas Lee. Welcome to the podcast.
Next, we have the piano lesson. And after the success of Francis and Marie's Black Bottom, I was hoping this movie would continue that success, especially with Denzel Washington's son directing it. And after watching it, it was anything but that. It's like this movie took everything those movies stood for and just swept it under the rug. The only positives I can say are the actors do their best without the given, and the cinematography and production values I need, but that's it. Stories all over the place, with all these subplots involving the history of this fucking piano. Goes through all these themes, but doesn't really develop them all that much. Scenes go on and on for the sake of a 2-hour runtime, almost like the play it was based on was rather short. The tone doesn't know whether we want it to be a historical drama, a comedy, or a horror film. Especially with a third act, which, spoiler alert, but who gives a shit? They have to deal with these ghosts in the house or whatever. It's like you were watching 12 Years a Slave, but all of a sudden it turns into an episode of The Haunting of Hill House. So overall, what the hell was this movie? No, seriously, what the hell was this movie? It goes through so many plot threads and tone inconsistencies that it's hard to even describe it. So yeah, it's easy to see why it's been forgotten in the shelf other than much better Oscar films. Hell, Emilia Pérez was better than this shit because at least I can somewhat understand what they were doing. I'm giving this a sealed disapproval, and I hope to never have to watch it again.
I have to disagree with you saying this is better than Emilia Pérez. I have to disagree with you saying Emilia Pérez is better than this because I at least knew what the piano lesson was trying to accomplish. And by the way, your reaction to the film was like how I felt with like Babylon. So yeah. But anyway, now to me, I thought the movie was okay. I thought the movie was all right. The directing was very good. The acting was terrific. Samuel L. Jackson, John David Washington, Ray Fisher, and Michael Potts all give up very good performances. But Daniel Deadwyler absolutely delivers one of the year's best supporting performances as Bernice, especially with how raw and powerful her performance felt. I mean, as someone who was angry that she was snubbed for Best Actress for Till, like, seriously, Oscars, what were you thinking? She absolutely, yeah, as someone who's still angry about that, I can say this right now. Give her that Oscar nomination for the piano lesson, please. This is a great performance. It has a great musical. Alexandre Desplat's musical score was. Excuse me. Let me repeat one. Let me rephrase the other thing I just said. Alexandre Desplat's musical score. Alexandre Desplat's musical score was great. It's got excellent cinematography and brilliant production values and costume design. However, the story was a convoluted mess, and the screenplay was also an overblown mess. While it did deliver sharp dialogue, most of the characters felt underdeveloped. And I agree with Søren. And Søren, you're definitely right on the money when you said the tone felt very inconsistent, because that's what it felt like. That's how the tone of this one felt. Like, it couldn't even decide if it wanted to be a family drama, a comedy, or a ghost story. And the themes involving family legacy, generational trauma, and confronting the past in order to move forward are either undercut or never come to fruition. Some of the editing choices made in the film came off as being uneven and choppy. And not only was the pacing a sluggish mess, but the ending felt rushed and underwhelming. Overall, while the film features Danielle Deadwyler giving out one of the year's best supporting performances, as well as some memorable moments here and there, I unfortunately found the piano lesson to be uneven and underwhelming. Not a terrible movie, but not something I'm gonna see myself watching again. 5 out of 10 or a C+.
Now, what is a terrible movie is Red One.
Oh my god.
This was one of those movies that has been getting nothing but the worst press. From its overproduced $250 million budget, to the generic-looking trailers, to the overall negative reviews when it finally came out. When I sat down to watch this, I was hoping all this press was exaggerating on how bad this movie is, but after it was over, I can tell you that everything you've heard about this was fucking warranted, because this movie is nothing short of horrible. This is the prime example of Hollywood spending unlimited resources on expensive special effects and an all-star cast for the sake of a quick buck, without even putting any sense of soul into it. This was nothing more than a poorly written mismatch of numerous Christmas movie tropes from the likes of Arthur Christmas, Krampus, the Santa Claus movies, and a fuck ton of others that I don't have the time nor patience to narrow down right now. Every single actor is just there to sell tickets. Chris Evans is an unlikable dweeb. The Rock is a know-it-all smartass. J.K. Simmons just makes me watch. I was watching his turn as a Netflix Klaus. None of the money shown on screen as to as a production values look drab and the CG looks cheap as hell. And it doesn't help that most of the scenes are just...
Like, for goodness sake, this movie cost $250 million to make, and yet it looks so sloppy and so cheap that in some scenes you can clearly see the actors standing in a green screen because of how awful the visual effects looked. Especially when some of them look like something out of an early PS3 game.
And it doesn't help that most of the scenes are just exposition upon exposition dump, nothing more.
Which is one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to movies like this. Like guys, we know what's going on. You don't need to provide exposition dumps for the sake of like making the audiences look stupid. Like, come on!
It has some of the worst comedic timing I've seen in a movie like this. And for a movie that claims to be about the Christmas spirit, this just has no holiday spirit.
This was one of those movies where it actually left a sour taste in my mouth due to how mean-spirited it felt. How mean-spirited and cynical it felt.
It doesn't have holiday spirit. It has Hollywood spirit. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, really.
It's not only one of the very worst movies of the year, but it's also one of the very worst holiday movies of all time. Period. Exclamation mark even. It not only deserves a big enough lump of coal to fuel the Polar Express for the next millennium, but also my big fat seal of rage.
This is hands down one of the worst movies I've seen this entire year. I couldn't find anything redeeming in this movie whatsoever. And I know some people are going to say, "Oh, come on, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I've seen far worse." Yes, it is. It is that bad. I mean, for goodness sake. I'm not kidding when I say that this is one of those movies where this isn't just one of the year's worst movies. It's also one of the most mean-spirited, cynical, idiotic, depressing, and reprehensible holiday movies I've ever seen. Not only is it one of those movies where you can easily predict how the story of the film will turn out and what the message is, but it also left me having such a very bad taste in my mouth due to how ugly, cynical, and mean-spirited it felt. Like, when I'm watching a Christmas movie, I should feel the joy and spirit of the holiday season. Not having such a mean-spirited Christmas movie where it left a very sour taste in my mouth. And you know what? Even the mean-spiritedness in Eli Roth's Thanksgiving wasn't this excessive compared to this. And I didn't like that movie. I mean, just... Now, am I really asking for, like, a Christmas movie to be all, like, Barney the dinosaur, jolly and happy all the time? No. But I am asking that if you're going to have a mean-spirited character in a holiday movie, not only do you need to have it serve a purpose, but have clever writing while also not feeling repetitive by making him feel like he's a real human being. Like, why do you think I love the story? Why do you think I love the story of Scrooge? Yes, Scrooge starts out as mean-spirited, but once he's revisited by Jacob Marley and the three ghosts from past, present, and future, and make him reflect on his behavior and greediness and what could happen if he continues with this, he changes his ways and becomes good in the end. That's why the story of Scrooge works so well. Red One, on the other hand, has the main character Jack be all mean-spirited throughout, and even when he starts to become nice again and learn his lesson in the third act, it doesn't feel earned, especially when it's too little, too late. And you know what? The practical effects could have been the only redeeming thing in the film If it weren't for the fact that Krampus and the others were there just to provide exposition dialogue, exposition dump dialogue. The story felt cliche and repetitive. The screenplay was one of the worst of the year, not only due to how one-dimensional and mean-spirited the characters felt, but how the dialogue in the film was so sloppy that it felt like an AI wrote this. I was also very disappointed Jake Kasdan's directing in the film. I mean, we're talking about the same guy. We're talking about the same guy who did Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Jumanji The Next Level, which I really enjoyed both of those movies.
And let's just hope the fourth Jumanji movie turns out better in a couple of years.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, we're talking about the same guy that did those movies, and yet his directing in the film was really sloppy as hell. The acting was terrible, especially from Dwayne Johnson, who his performance in the film felt shallow and stiff, especially since it looked like he didn't even want to be there. And given the behind-the-scenes drama he caused, it's not hard to see why, especially given the fact how he was like 7 to 8 hours late on set, and in order to, like, I'm not kidding, by the way, with like what he does in order to save time. In order to save time, now here it is, because this is the real kicker, he peed in water bottles. Let me repeat that again. In order to save time to film more scenes, whenever Dwayne Johnson needed to like take a piss, he peed in water bottles. I couldn't make shit like this up, guys. Like even Dwayne Johnson admitted that. Chris and okay. But he's not the only actor that I couldn't stand throughout. Chris Evans was so obnoxious as Jack. One of his worst performances of his career, and there's no chemistry between him and Johnson whatsoever. Lucy Liu and Bonnie Hunt were both horribly wasted in this movie since they're not given that much to do in the film. While J.K. Simmons, good grief, as Santa Claus, he looked like he was sleepwalking. He looked like he was sleepwalking throughout his role. Like he was like, you guys have a Merry Christmas. You guys have a Merry Christmas then. Like your guess is as good as mine, honestly. I was also disappointed in how bland Henry Jackman's musical score felt, and that's disappointing given the fact that he used to compose some very good musical scores. And say what you want about Pixels, that was a terrible movie for sure, but at least the score in that film was good. But with Red One's like musical score, however, no, it felt so bland and generic. It felt so bland and just it felt so bland and unremarkable. The cinematography was a shake. And I was going to bring this back, but in terms of the cinematography, it was nothing but a shaking mess throughout. And it's disappointing, given the fact that this is the same cinematographer that shot some of the movies directed by J.J. Abrams, like Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Wars The Force Awakens. Like, what happened here? The editing was a muddled mess. The pace and the pacing was a sluggish mess. It's also very predictable, and not only in terms of its story, but the outcome of it, but in its overall message as well. It has terrible action sequences, sluggish pacing. It's also filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before, as well, and it has a very lackluster ending. But that's nothing compared to my biggest problem with this movie. And yeah, it was in theaters, but because it bombed at the box office, it was short-lived. And yeah, the fact that Dwayne compared this to Oppenheimer, like, are you fucking kidding me? No, Dwayne, no. You did not make the next Oppenheimer. You made one of the worst Christmas movies I've ever seen in my life. And we will talk about that film on the next podcast, Nick. So hang in there. But anyway, as terrible as those scenes I mentioned were, that's nothing compared to the horrendous CGI effects. I am not kidding that the CGI effects not only looked absolutely cheap and abysmal, especially when some looked like something out of a PS3 game, but some looked unfinished. And the green screen effects that the actors stand in front of couldn't look any more obvious. How in the holy mother of shit this movie cost $250 million to make, and it looks this cheap and ugly? It's something I'll never understand whatsoever. Like, good grief. Like, 250 million? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Oh my God. 200. What kind of a world am I? What kind of a world am I living in? I'm honestly losing my mind. I'm honestly losing my mind today. It's because of the fact of how over budgeted it felt. The fact that I'm getting so sick and tired of movies that are over budgeted and they look this cheap and horrible. Yeah. Yeah, overall, Red One is cynical, mean-spirited, idiotic, reprehensible, and depressing. And above all that, it's one of the very worst movies I've seen in 2024, and one of the very worst Christmas movies I've ever seen in my life. And with that, it is getting my 8th 0 out of 10 or an F. Boo! Fuck this movie.
Yeah, this movie was a real pain in my ass. And speaking of real pain, after Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut didn't exactly impress me last year, I was hoping his next film would blow it out of the water, and this one more than did. Story about distant cousins who bond over a Warsaw trip is compelling thanks to writing, cinematography, music, and especially acting, with Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin being the standouts. And at just about an hour and a half, it doesn't drag or overstay its welcome. So definitely one that'll establish Eisenberg as not just an actor, but a writer-director as well, and I'll give real pain to seal of cinema.
This is one of the best movies I've seen this year. The story felt highly engaging. Jesse Eisenberg's directing was fantastic, and so was the screenplay, especially with how real and fleshed out the characters felt. How it has such witty and well-written dialogue, and how it does a fantastic job exploring its themes involving masculinity, grief, generational trauma, and reconnection. The acting was... Oh! Damn it, you! Damn it, you stupid phone! I didn't ask for you to boo this movie. This was a great film. Sorry about that. I have no idea how that just happened. Anyway, let's anyway, let me continue. Let me continue what I'm about to say. The acting was terrific. Jesse Eisenberg was excellent as David. But Kieran Culkin, what a performance! This is one of the best supporting performances of the year. It's really surprising how far he has come over the years. I mean, he was known as Fuller from the first two Home Alone movies, and then he was in Igby Goes Down, which was a great movie. And now he plays Benji in A Real Pain, and this is like his best performance he's given out so far in his career. He needs give him that Best Supporting Actor nomination, please. He deserves it. Not to mention the chemistry between him and Eisenberg had in the film was fantastic. And one other thing I want to mention about the acting too, Jennifer Grey, who you may remember from Dirty Dancing and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is in this movie, and she was great. She was wonderful in this film as Marcia. Marcia. The musical score was brilliant, especially with how the score is all done in piano. It has fantastic cinematography, terrific editing. It's very well paced throughout. And not to mention, the humor felt clever and well written, especially with how it handled its odd couple-esque comedy. Hey, Venom Venom movies. Hey, Sony, with your Venom movies, take notes. And when it came to some of the emotional moments, I was really surprised with how deep some of the things were shown in the film were, especially when it came to some of the dramatic elements that actually sent chills down my spine. I'm not gonna give away what they are, but once you see it, you know what I'm talking about. And the ending was also very satisfying as well. One of my favorite endings I've seen in the movie this year. Overall, I loved it. I loved Real Pain. It was funny. It was entertaining. And deeply moving. And above all, it's one of the year's best films. And above all that, it's one of the year's best films. And I am definitely going to give A Real Pain an enthusiastic 10 out of 10 or an A+. Well done, Jesse Eisenberg. Well done.
Now we're going to get to small things like these. And when I saw the trailer, it looked like an interesting character study on Cillian Murphy and his family in Ireland. However, watching this movie gave me anything but interest. It tries to call out on the Catholic Church and their effect on the children, but it doesn't even go anywhere with it. It has good actors, but no interesting characters. The cinematography can be nice, but the pacing is just slow with nothing happening. Like the filmmakers were struggling to get this past an hour and a half. So not terrible, but not something I'd recommend, and I'll give it the seal of mediocrity.
This is one of our biggest disagreements because I love this movie. I thought Small Things Like These was a brilliant. I thought Small Things Like These was a brilliant was a compelling film that did a fantastic job exploring grief and trauma as well as the abuse. Let me rephrase what I just said. I'm sorry. This is what happens when I don't come in prepared. Also, if you hear any talking in the background, I do apologize. Right. Hold on. Let me mute the mic for a second. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. What I was saying about small things like these is that yeah, it will not be for everybody due to the fact that it's a quiet and meditative drama involving like Cillian Murphy's character Bill and the grief and trauma he faced he faced in the past, as well as the abuse and corruption that went on at the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. But I thought it was a haunting, compelling, and deeply absorbing film that moved me from beginning to end, while also had me on the edge of my seat throughout. So, and Cillian Murphy absolutely delivers one of his best performances yet. Yeah, I mean this was a brilliant follow up to his well-deserved Oscar-winning performance in Oppenheimer. So, yeah, and the rest of the actors were fantastic too, especially Emily Watson, who was brilliant as in this movie as Sister Mary. Like, my God, she was menacing throughout the film. Like, oh, it's well directed, well written, well shot, well edited, very well paced throughout. Yes, the pacing is slow burn, but it actually works. But it actually works with the tone and atmosphere it tries to go for. And what I also really liked about this film is that although I'm sorry, God damn it, I don't know why I keep stuttering a lot and mumbling at some things. They're like not important. But anyway, it's got a great score, nice looking visuals, a great score, and a very satisfying ending. And yeah, overall, I love Small Things Like These. I think it's one of my favorite films of the year, and I'm going to give Small Things Like These a very enthusiastic 9.5 out of 10, or an A. I might bump it up to a 10 the more if I do watch it. I might bump it up to a 10 depending on how I feel about this movie, but for right now, it's a 9.5 out of 10, or an A. I loved it.
Now we're going to get to Gladiator II. And the original Gladiator seems like a one-and-done experience back in 2000.
Right.
But for some reason, Ridley Scott has been trying to get a sequel off the ground, even to the point where he had an initial script where Maximus comes back to life, kills Jesus, and gets immortality. Seriously, that's an actual script. But the good news with the sequel is that they didn't go that route and instead focus on an all new cast of characters. The bad news is it's nothing more than a half-assed fan fiction written by a teenager, to the point where it's more or less the same movie again. War hero gets thrust into slavery where he becomes a gladiator and slowly becomes popular enough to face up against the current Caesar. Sure, there's some minor differences, but when I saw exact scenes being recreated almost shot for shot, all they did was make me wish I was watching the original again. Well, the actors skipped their role. I, for the life of me, couldn't tell you the characters' names. And it seems like this movie tries to go bigger and better than before with all these CG animals being thrown in, and it just looks fake.
Oh my God, the CG animals! Like, good grief! They look so bad, especially with how they look. They look like PS3 graphics.
I will say the production design costumes are neat, the music's decent enough, and there are some fun fight scenes here and there. So if that's what you're looking for, you'll be entertained enough. But if you're looking for a sequel that builds upon the impact of the original Best Picture winner, you'll be sorely disappointed. Ultimately, I'll give Glad I-A-Tor, because even though Ridley Scott isn't safe with a fan-forced gimmick, apparently, to see a mediocrity.
It may be better than House of Gucci and Napoleon, mainly because it's very well directed. The acting was terrific, especially from Paul Mescal, who was great as Lucius, while Pedro Pascal and especially Denzel Washington both steal the entire show. And it's got a great musical score, fantastic cinematography, excellent productive values in costume design and set design, and some fun battle sequences. But, and this is a big but, this movie was a mess. The story was easily one of my biggest issues with the film, especially with how it basically rehashed the same plot points as the first film, with the only difference being that it's Lucius. And as Søren mentioned earlier, if you've seen the first movie, you basically know how the story in the Gladiator II is going to go, especially with what Søren just said. And it also didn't help that the screenplay was also a lackluster mess, especially given how minus General Asias and Macronius, most of the characters felt underdeveloped, and the dialogue felt cliched, and the plot and what I also really didn't, and the screenplay, like the story, basically rehashes the same plot points from the first film. There were also some choices and decisions involving some of the editing where they show a couple of clips from the first Gladiator film that felt very jarring and uneven. Like guys, we saw the first Gladiator movie. You don't need. We already know how it went. You don't need to show us that again. The pacing was a wonky mess. Was a bit of a wonky mess at times. Sometimes it's too frantic and sometimes it's too sluggish. And because the story is basically a rehash of the first film, it also has a share of cliches as well. And the CGI effects on the animals. Oh my God. Like, I already explained this before and I'm going to say it again. They look like something out of a PS3 game. That's how bad they looked. like $250 million was mostly well spent on the sets, props, and costumes and stuff. But when it came to the effects, I'm sorry, but that was poorly spent. Overall, Gladiator 2 was just okay. While the film is very well acted, including Denzel Washington stealing the show, and the film featuring some entertaining and memorable moments here and there, I sadly found Gladiator 2 to be cliched, dull, and pretty underwhelming to say the least. Yeah, 5 out of 10 or a C+. I wasn't a fan of this movie. It's not terrible, but it's not something I'm going to see myself watching again.
Now we're going to get to Spellbound. And man, I thought luck was bad, but this movie honestly makes that film look tolerable.
Exactly, Taz! Exactly!
This feels like John Lasseter giving Disney the finger by making the very thing that people who hate Disney movies think Disney movies are. I get the intended message regarding divorce and its effect on the child and everyone around them, but could they at least make the overall project appealing? As is, the animation feels like those CGI Barbie movies trying to fail to be Pixar. The celebrity voices feel phoned in as all hell. The songs feel just as AI generated as those from Wish, only not nearly as funny. The pacing ranges from okay to annoyingly frantic, and the jokes are about as funny as seeing an orphanage full of kids being demolished. After this movie, I'm questioning why John Lasseter is even allowed within 100 feet of any animation studio again, as not only has he not learned his lesson in terms of his creepy scandals, but his filmmaking spark is officially gone. As long as he's in the CEO chair, I'm officially done rooting for Skydance Animation, as all it is an empty house that tries to be this big animation company but fucking fails at all regards. I'm giving Spellbound the sealed disapproval, and I'm also giving John Lasseter the biggest middle finger I could ever give.
Up yours, John.
And speaking of musicals, let's talk about one that actually works, Wicked Part 1.
Yes!
I know a lot of us were skeptical when they announced that they would pull Deathly Hallows on this musical, but thankfully they pulled through. Instead of cutting down plot threads and musical numbers for the sake of a show runtime, this movie instead explores on the world of Oz, brought spectacularly to life through the production design and costumes. But the cast is what makes this movie. Jonathan Bailey, Michelle Yeoh, Peter Dinklage, and Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard of Oz, if you will, all give their A game to their respective roles. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are fucking perfect as Glinda and Holdovers, especially in terms of their musical sequences. Especially the climax, which alone makes it worth seeing in theaters.
Absolutely.
So go see this movie and discover why it continues to defy gravity and expectations every step of the way. And I'll give Wicked Part 1 the seal of cinema.
I would give this a 10 out of 10, but the only thing that kept it from being a 10 was that I did think the film was 15 minutes too long. I did think the film was 15 minutes too long, especially since there were some scenes that did drag the film down a bit. But there were some things in the film that did drag a bit, but that's really it. I love this movie. It's one of the year's best films. It has a highly engaging story, excellent screenplay, especially in terms of well-written dialogue and brilliant characterization. John M. Chu delivered a fantastic. It's very well directed by John M. Chu, and this is really interesting because once upon a time, John M. Chu has made some pretty lackluster movies, including German Holograms. But then he made a 180 flip in 2018 with Crazy Rich Asians, and then made one of my favorite movies of 2021, which was in the Heights, and now he's done it again with Wicked Part 1, which is also one of the best movies I've seen this year. The acting was terrific. Cynthia Erivo was magnificent as Elphaba Throp, while Ariana Grande gives up one of the year's best supporting performances as Galinda. And the on-screen chemistry they had in the film couldn't be any more pitch perfect, since it makes you buy on the fact that their characters were once friends. The songs were absolutely magnificent. And so was the score. Especially with how catchy and well done they felt. And the choreography on the musical numbers was fantastic. And speaking of fantastic, so was the cinematography. It's got brilliant editing. It's very well paced throughout. It's got some moments of good humor sprinkled into the mix. It's got terrific production values and costume design, fantastic makeup and hairstyling, and a brilliant ending, while also having a conclusion that leaves you hungry to see part 2. And the visual effects and the CGI visual effects on the talking animals was very well done. Very, very well done. $150 million well spent. Overall, Wicked Part 1 features some magnificent performances by Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, and this is one of the most dazzling, highly entertaining, and exhilarating movie musicals I've ever seen. And as stated before, this is one of the best movies I've seen this entire year. And with that, Wicked gets a very... Excuse me. And with that, Wicked gets a very enthusiastic 9.5 out of 10 or an A. One of the year's best films. Check it out.
Finally, we're going to get to Moana 2. And apparently, this has gone massive financial success, not only being the first Disney animated movie to break even in theaters since Frozen 2 5 years ago, but it's been breaking box office records in terms of the Thanksgiving weekend. And I only have one thing to say. I'm not happy, Bob. Not
happy either.
Happy. And I'll tell you why I'm unhappy. Because moviegoers' priorities make me unhappy.
Oh yeah. You were quoting The Incredibles. Never mind. Let me do that for you. I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy.
And I'll tell you why I'm unhappy. Because moviegoers' priorities make me unhappy. Seeing both kids and adults be entertained by a movie like this, I can handle. What I can't handle is the fact that they're putting money towards a movie that's more or less the exact same story as the original film, complete with songs that are just dollar store versions of the songs from the original. You got the dollar store How Far I Go, you got the dollar store Shiny, you got the dollar store You're Welcome, and so on and so forth. The characters are nothing of worth. None of the new characters are memorable or charming enough to even know their names. The best humor comes from the chicken and marriage tattoo again, while the rest is just juvenile, like the writers want to entertain the kids in the most low-effort way. And to top it all off, it's so emotionally manipulative in how it wants to be the next Marvel film. I mean, listen to some of the music.
Nice try.
Listen to some of the music, watch the ending and mid-credit scene, and tell me they don't want to make the next MCU.
Like, seriously.
Overall, is this the future of Disney animation now? These low-effort animated films that throw in decent celebrity voices and good animation for the sake of cheap profit? And after this movie's success, I guarantee they're just gonna make more of these instead of films like Wreck-It Ralph, rather than Last Dragon, even the first Moana. And it's safe to say Walt Disney's legacy deserves better. Moana 2 gets a seal of mediocrity.
Yeah, I didn't like this movie either. Other than good animation, very good voice acting, great musical score, and 20% of the humor landing for me, with most of it coming from the chicken, and with most of the 20% coming from Maui and the chicken, everything else felt. Moana 2 was unfortunately a very underwhelming and dull sequel. I really did not like this movie. 4 out of 10 or C minus. And yeah, really, you need to retire, Bob Iger. You need to retire. Just watch the first film instead of this.
Now, as for my pick of the show, I was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to talk about in this episode. Should I talk about a Christmas classic or an Oscar film in time for the season? But considering that a certain cartoon had its 35th anniversary around this time, and since its first episode is a Christmas special, I figured I'd talk about 2007's The Simpsons movie. I know a lot of people hold this in decent regard and consider it a decent extended episode of the show, but to me, it's one of the best episodes of the show, so who am I to complain? This is one of those life-and movies where the writer's doing everything in terms of humor, from slapstick to dialogue-driven jokes, from in-your-face humor to subtle humor. Then the story's really compelling too, tackling religion, environmental issues, and political corruption. Then it's got its fair share of drama as well, which flows in rather well with the humor shenanigans. So if you're a fan of The Simpsons and you haven't seen this movie, seriously, are you living under a rock?
Seriously.
And if you haven't seen this series, this isn't a half-bad introduction to the franchise. As for my dog of the show, I already talked about one shitty Christmas movie last time, so why not do it again here? This time we're going to talk about The Nutcracker, The Untold Story, better known as The Nutcracker in 3D.
Oh boy, this movie.
Now I get this is supposed to be the passion project for Tango and cast director Andrei Konchap.
Might as well call him shot.
But much like Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, the term passion project means very little here. This movie tries to adapt the classic Nutcracker fairy tale and modernize it for a new generation or something, except really awkwardly. And I get trying to go dark for the sake of challenging the kids in the audience, but this is a case of going too far. The only good things I can say are the sets are pretty impressive and look like a lot of money was put into them, and that the songs that Tim Rice adapted from the ballet and added lyrics aren't gonna win some awards, but are decent enough. But that's pretty much it. It's got some of the weirdest pacing ever, jumping from this boring real world with Nathan Lane as Albert Einstein for some reason, to this fantasy world filled with some horrific CG on the title character and the Rat King and such. But perhaps the most misguided aspect of this movie is how they made the villains reminiscent of Nazis and the Holocaust. Like, there's subtle symbolism, and then you can pretty much guess what this is. So while Nutcracker the Untold Story isn't quite the worst Christmas movie out there, or even the worst Nutcracker movie, as I'd rather watch this over The Four Realms, this is still not a good one to check out this holiday season.
I'm still speechless at what you just said there. I don't have a dog of I don't have a dog in the show, but I do have a dog. But I do have a pick of the show, and this one is one of the best movies I saw last year, and definitely worth checking out this holiday season. The Holdovers.
One of the best modern Christmas movies.
Absolutely. Davine Joy Randolph was magnificent, and her winning the Oscar for her performance for Best Supporting Actress was so well deserved. And Paul Giamatti was brilliant in this movie, and Dominic Sessa was brilliant as this rebellious like teenager, and above all that, it was a great movie that. And above all that, it was a great movie that. Above all that, this is also one of Alexander Payne's very best movies. Like this is one of those movies where he just made one of the most wholesome and deeply one of the funniest and most wholesome and deeply moving films I've ever seen. And yeah. Overall, The Holdovers is a great film and one of his very best movies, and one of the funniest and most deeply moving films I saw last year, and that's why The Holdovers is my pick of the show. Check it out. One of the best movies I saw last year. Please see it.
Finally, here are this year's National Film Registry submissions. We have Annabelle's Serpentine Dance, and no, this isn't another spin-off of The Conjuring. We have Coco's Earth Control. We have Angels with Dirty Faces, not to be confused with Angels with Filthy Souls. Pride of the Yankees, Invaders from Mars, The Miracle Worker, The Chelsea Girls, Ganja and Hess, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Uptown Saturday Night, the Zora Lathan student films, Up in Smoke, Well, Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, Beverly Hills Cop, Dirty Dancing,
Yes!
Common Thread Stories from the Quilt, Powwow Highway, My Own Private Idaho, American Me, Familia, Compensation, Spy Kids, No Country for Old Men, and last but not least, The Social Network.
I think Dirty Dancing was well deserving to be on there, and same thing could be said with The Social Network. That was like one of the best movies to come out from the last decade. And also, when as soon as you mentioned Angels with Filthy Souls, I couldn't help but think of this. Hold it right.
Christmas, you filthy animal.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. Oh, wait. Hold on. I'm sorry. As soon as Søren mentioned Angels with Filthy Souls, I knew right away. Like, this came in my mind.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.
I'm sorry. You knew I was gonna have to mention Home Alone 2 at some point. Yeah, you knew I was gonna have to mention that one at some point. But yeah. Well, guys, that's gonna do it for this podcast. I would like to thank you all for joining us on this podcast. It was a lot of fun doing, and since we're only 5 days away till Christmas, I just want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas, and whatever you're doing this Christmas, I hope it's a good one for you guys, and I hope and guys, spend a lot of time with your family. You never know how long it's going to be before they're gone. So So spend time with your family this holiday season. It's very important. It's very important. Do you wish to say something else, Søren?
Next time we go over some films in November and December, lean up to the worst films of the year.
Yep, Yep. New Year's Eve, guys. New Year's Eve. We are going over the worst movies that Søren and I saw in 2024. So, oh boy, I better get myself ready to see like films like Y2K, Kraven the Hunter, and Mufasa to see if they qualify. So, yeah. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. And as always, be sure to subscribe to Søren Saunders on his YouTube channel. The link is in the description below. Give him the love he absolutely deserves. He's a great person to talk to hang out with, as well as watch the videos of. And until we see you all again on New Year's Eve for the 53rd episode of the FilmBrony Podcast, as well as the worst movies that Søren and I saw in 2024. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, and as always, be sure to take good care of yourself. Not just physically, but mentally as well, because that's very important. So, yeah, Merry Christmas, and we will see you all on New Year's Eve. As always, so long for now.